And ladies and gentlemen, we are back with the next segment of Shoots from KCW with the Dragon King Shadow. Last segment, we got into how KCW was born, his bonds with the people in the back and in the ring, and now we want to get more into more personal things, Shadow, and more like, where do you come from? Where does Shadow to you come from? Or where was his genesis?
Oh boy. You're gonna look at me like I got 6 heads.
What if I already am? I'm just kidding, sir.
His story is a funny one because I was a big anime fan, big into cartoons and action and all this other stuff. And when I was like young in grammar school, like really young, I would come up with these stories and write them down. And when I was bored, I'd do them in my head. And I know my friend Giuseppe, he jokes around with me. He goes, "You had a series in your head that nobody even knows of but yourself, and you used to have interviews and actions. And season 1, season 2, you could quote stuff that nobody even knows of." And I tried explaining it to him, and he would just look at me like I have 6 heads. Try to explain the different villains to him, and it came to when I was in 6th grade, and I had to come up with another character who was an ally for me. I was like, who can this be? Who is this character? And I remember in camp, summer camp, someone was talking to me about Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm a big Sonic the Hedgehog fan, and I never had the Dreamcast. So he gave me Sonic Adventure 2, and it was this dark red and black hedgehog, and I went, "Who's that?" And he goes, "That's Shadow the Hedgehog." And I went, "Shadow the Hedgehog," and I kept on repeating, "Shadow," and I went, "Perfect! I love that! I love it! Shadow, great name!" And I just built this character that it became like a shielding. Like in grammar school, I was bullied a lot, so it was, instead of me, it was Shadow. He was my strength. And then when I started KCW, it was what should I call myself? Shadow, perfect. There you go. And then I created the character, and I elaborated on him even more as this guy who's better than everybody, and we had old storylines. And I was everybody knows me as being the heel. Such a great heel as I was, but
I believe you've never been a face.
That's a lie.
Shadow has been a face?
That's a lie. I was a face.
Probably seems like it was short-lived.
It was short-lived in KCW, but I was a part of another company. That we had dual companies. I was a face in one company, and we had this big storyline that it's really convoluted to get into. But I was a baby face. And I was the savior of the company, and because the company was we had these internal people that wanted to destroy the company, and I was the savior of the company. We had this big 10-person Survivor Series match, and I was the big survivor of it, and that's how I was the baby face. But as the character evolved, I started getting more into like reading about ancient Egyptian stuff and dragons and different ancient mythology stuff. And before I was the Dragon King, I was the Pharaoh. It wasn't an on-screen character. That's how people would refer to me backstage as, "Oh, there goes the Pharaoh," because I was very, you always see me with the Egyptian book backstage reading about different things. And I said, how can I portray that as a character? And I came up with the Dragon King, where he was, I am on top of a pedestal, and that's when, after I won my 13th world title, I was like, I am beyond everybody, because nobody touched me. It was like 13, and most somebody else had was 4. So I had like a big, huge gap, and I was like, nobody can touch me. Nobody can even come close to me.
Well, obviously your character comes from a very narcissistic light, and very interesting one, because you have aligned yourself several times with several different characters. You aligned yourself at one point with the Radicals, which was the Fallen Angel and Death X and Big Bad Bill. That was one alliance. You had another alliance very briefly with supposedly the story was that you supposedly brought in Jacob Nightmare, but then because the person portraying the character left, that got squashed.
We can get into that later.
And you obviously aligned yourself for several years with Jim Sin. That was the Ministry, but even after the group was done, you two still stuck together. Again, art imitating life. But you've also done very well for yourself, obviously being an 18-time world champion, as a singles competitor. Now, if you could reflect possibly, and this seems like a question that would be best fitted toward the end of the interview, but it's honestly the only question I could think of at this point. Who did you have your best matches with? Who brought out the best in the Dragon King, and who made you think better on your feet when you were out there and you were performing?
Well, a lot of my friends say I make a lot of people look like $1 million. Who I have, I'm gonna take that question as who do I have fun with in the ring mostly. Always have a blast with Cage. I mean, look at him. You stand me next to him, it's like, how the hell is this guy gonna kick that tall guy's ass?
And yet it happens.
and yet it happens. Like it's just funny because it's like I've always had matches with people where it's like maybe a little taller than me, a little shorter than me, but never someone that's like tall. Could be two of me, so it's like it's always fun trying to figure out, well, how am I going to get them down to my level and stuff. And it's always being like, I don't want to like steal from Triple H, but it's always like a cerebral game. It's like, how can you get them down on one knee, or how can you beat them in a ring? Always have fun with Kurt Angle. I think I have some of my best matches with Kurt, because him and me we just give each other a look and we would know what to do. Like, I've tapped out to his ankle lock a couple of times, and he's actually put it on me a couple of times, and not very fun. Not very fun when he does it. Death X I have a ball with, even though a lot of people say he can't sell, he's green. I mean, look his match with me. Don't want to be narcissistic, but he looks like he could take a lot of a beating from me. Jim Sin, he's I've had 3 matches with him.
One we don't speak of.
One we don't speak of. Out of the both of them, I can't. Out of the 2 really high-profile ones, really can't tell you which one is my favorite.
The ironic rumor is that this has been circulating through fans that have watched the matches and know you both personally. The rumor is that when you won your match against him, you were exhausted, but he felt he could go longer. And yet when he won his match against you, you felt you could go longer. Is that a true rumor or is that false?
Oh, no, that's true. The Death by Dishonor match...
you were dominant in that match.
Was I exhausted during that match?
No, he won that match, and supposedly he was tired when it was over.
I don't know why, because he was on his ass the whole time. I was doing most of the work.
You seem to be doing a lot of the groundwork during that match. You look like you were doing most of the physical part.
We went, what, 40 minutes the first time?
The first match I believe was 45 minutes. The second match was 42 minutes.
Yeah, which is strange. The Death by Dishonor match, I was still very, very nervous because the match that we had before that was like he destroyed me. I believe his ego got in the way. Yeah, I remember throwing a temper tantrum backstage. I don't remember if I was 8. I think I was 18 at that time.
I don't think that happened.
World champion.
I don't think that happened ever again after that.
Yeah, I threw a temper. I was like, I'm an 18-time world champion. You're the rookie. I'm supposed to make you look good, and you made me look like shit. And a lot of people joke around. It's like, yeah, you stuck Death X on him when Giuseppe didn't want to come back, and you told him the story, and he was like, yeah, look, give him to me. I'll humble him. Which is semi-true. The third match, I remember we were racking our brains about how can we make this a million times better? And I halfway during the match, I was like, this isn't like for some reason during the beginning of the third match, I thought the wheels weren't. I thought it was very slow. Looking back at it, I was blown away. But you know, you being your own critic.
A lot of people seem to think that that was one of the better matches on the final card, and that was a stacked card with very good matches.
Funny little tidbit. I forgot the ending. Towards the end, I was like, "Shit, what's the ending?" And you could hear on camera me whispering like, oh, "Shit, I forgot the ending." And I don't know if it was Jim or Lou was like pedigree into an SKO, and I was like, "Oh yeah," like because I was so involved with everything backstage. I think that was the most I was involved backstage in a while, running around doing stuff. So I was like, my match was the last thing on my mind at that point because I was like, "Got to get this in." And I remember Joe was nervous and Bill was nervous about their match. We'll get into that later. And he was like, "I want to be good," and I was like, pep talking to both of them. We were rebooking everything because something happened a couple of days before, and I was just my mind just really wasn't on the match, and sure enough, it was the best one. I mean, I thought me and Jimson went out there, torn the house down, and I sometimes wonder like what would have happened if I made that the main event. Putting us on last, what would have happened? Would we even get to the match after the events that took place?
Well, that's something that that's something we'll get to in the next segment. Yeah. But to finish this segment up, I would like to ask you, as a pro wrestler, as a booker, what did you feel was your greatest accomplishment in KCW? In KCW overall, what was your greatest accomplishment?
As a booker, or just as a wrestler?
Overall, your time, your body, your mind, your heart that you put into the company. What was your greatest accomplishment? Whether it's a match, a pay-per-view.
When I first started KCW, I said to myself, all that I wanted is to look good. I always wanted to edit it, make it look like how WWE looks and everything. And I always thought the greatest accomplishment was right after I edited Starcase, which is the last pay-per-view that we ever did before the reunion. And I sat back and I watched it with all the editing and all the ring bell and the audience and all the promos that I spent 2-3 months on just getting everything together, having Jim sit down and critiquing, oh, I like this, I like that with the promos and everything, him writing down his promos, and after sitting there watching a 2.5-hour pay-per-view that we put together that was just on par with the WWE pay-per-view in terms of quality and editing, and everything was really good. And I sat there and I said, that is not going to get any higher. Like, I don't think, even if we continued the season and half the stuff that happened at that pay-per-view happened, don't think that it would have gotten as high as it would have.
Very strong words, very emotional words, and obviously something you are very proud of, as is everyone who was on that card that I have spoken with personally, are all very proud of that card and what was accomplished. But the unfortunate demise of KCW is something that we will be getting into in the next segment. Some rather unshaky words will be spoken. The next segment, we will be talking about those that were difficult to do business with. Those that gave KCW a lot of problems, unnecessarily so, and who was good to do business with. And in the final segment, which will be next, with the Dragon King, Shadow.